Good morning. Welcome to Kailo Baker. The story is a very disturbing one, where the Yidden are in the desert. They are getting ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. And they requested that, like many normal nations, before we go to conquer a land, especially that has 7 nations there, let's send spies. Let's figure out what's the best way to conquer it. What are we in for? Are they strong? Are they weak? What's their way of dealing with enemies? What should we be prepared for? It's a reasonable concern. And therefore they asked Moshe Rabbeinu, we want to send spies to go and figure out what the land of Israel is like, and more importantly, what are the enemies like? What type of war should we be prepared for? And it's interesting that Hashem didn't tell Moshe to do it. Actually, Hashem says, Shlach lecha, send it to you. And Rashi tells us, if you really want, I'm okay with it. Hashem, so to speak, reluctantly agreed, which is very indicative of the fact that just as we've seen so many miracles till now, we'll see many more miracles, and you don't have to worry about the natural element of how are we going to defeat these enemies. But be it as it may, the Jewish people requested it. Moshe spoke to Hashem, and Hashem gave him permission to send spies. Who did he send? And this is very important. He chose the heads of the Shvatim. Every tribe, as we know, had their own leader. Obviously, Moshe was the leader of the generation, the leader of the Jewish people, but every Nasi, every tribe had their leader. And these were, of course, chosen people, tzaddikim, very righteous, holy people. And they were the ones that led every individual tribe. These 12 leaders were chosen to go represent the Jewish people, spend time in Eretz Yisrael, check the place out, go to the length and the breadth of the land and figure it out. Come back with a report. And they did. 10 out of the 12 spies came back with a very, very negative report. They told the Jewish people, says the Parsha, Leinucha lales el ha'am chazaku mimenu, which loosely translates, we're not able to go up to this nation because they're stronger than us. Not possible. Okay? And they started to speak negative about the land of Eretz Yisrael. Firstly, the people there are not a match for us. As we'll see, there were giants. Secondly, there's a lot of interesting things going on over there. We saw people burying the dead. Wherever we went, there was funerals. We saw the sizes of the fruit, huge. Trying to describe it, just like the fruit is out of the ordinary and it's huge. Similarly, the people, they're unlike anything you've seen. You're not going to be able to just have a war with them and overcome them. And basically they said, forget it, let's not go up. Let's not go to Israel. Let's stay in the desert. Now, of course, Hashem was very upset. And how dare these people speak negative about Eretz Yisrael? And really they're speaking negative against Hashem, because they're saying this whole plan of Hashem to take us out of Mitzrayim, to give us the Torah, to bring us to Eretz Yisrael, it's a bad idea. We're not even going to make it in there. So you're not just speaking negative about the land. You're not just speaking negative about our next stage of what we're supposed to be doing. You're going against Hashem himself. And the punishment was a terrible one. And Hashem said this entire generation, minus Yeshua and Kalev, who these 2 other spies did not participate. They actually tried to quiet them down in the negative reporting. This whole generation, they're going to pass away. Not just the Esteem, the actual spies, the Meraglim that went, receive punishment, but the people of the generation that heard this, and they started to cry, and they said, what's going to be with us? Why were we taken out of Mitzrayim? Why do we have to die here? Even those people will die. And essentially, we ended up staying in the desert for 40 years until the remainder of that generation died. Anyone that was over the age of 20, between the age of 20 and 60 died. And their children, the next generation, would be the ones that would go into Eretz Yisrael, into Israel. And the question is, how is this possible to happen? Okay? First of all, you sent me on a mission. You told me to go and check out the land. I went, I checked out the land. But you want me to lie because that's part of the plan? Don't send me. If you send me and I'm honest, I'm doing my job, you told me to go find out what the deal is over there and how we should best conquer it. I did. I spent 40 days there, which is one of the reasons why 40 years were in the desert, 1 year per day that the Meraglim and the spies were there. We came back and we said that we saw it. It's not a good idea. We're not a match. It's not going to work. So you're punishing me because you don't like my report? Imagine you send someone, some general, and you ask him about a certain country if we should invade. And he comes back and he says no. Are you punishing him because you don't like his answer? Killing the messenger? He's not the one deciding this. One of the answers to this is their problem is not the reporting. The reporting is fine. Come back and tell us what you saw. The issue Moshe Rabbeinu has, and the reason why Hashem is upset, is because they concluded something. They came out with a result, with a conclusion, a maskana that says, we're not going. Don't go. It's not worth it. You were never asked if you should go or not. We're going to Eretz Yisrael. We wanted a little bit confidence, assurance, some strategy. Okay, it's fair enough. If you really you didn't even need that. You just rely on Hashem. He took us out of Egypt. He didn't ask us to make any strategies. Okay, he split the sea. He didn't ask us for his help, for our help. He'll get us into Eretz Yisrael. But if you really want to, go fine. You're welcome to go come up with a strategy. It's okay. We're actually told in general, a person should try to do their part and not just fully rely on Hashem's miracles. Okay. Maybe that generation should have expected a little bit more. We are accustomed to great miracles. But ultimately, come back and tell us what you've seen. This border is stronger. This group is a little bit weaker. Come up with an idea. But the issue they had, the avera, the sin that they committed was that the spies came back and they said, we're not going. It's not a good idea to go. We're not going to be able to conquer. That was never part of your mission. That's not what Hashem sent you for. That wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's request. You want to go, go. You want to check it out, give us a report. But don't tell us that therefore we can't go. And therefore they get punished. Not just them, but the whole generation. But what's really, really troubling is how could it be that such people made such a terrible mistake? These are not ordinary men. We said they're tzaddikim, they're righteous people, they're holy people, they're leaders of the Shvatim. How could they make such a terrible mistake? Yes, besides Yeshua and Kalev, these two. But otherwise, these are not simple people. They went, they messed up. Who speaks negatively against Hashem, against Moshe, and tells the Jewish people, nix this plan? And especially tzaddikim and righteous people. So to answer this, we have to look a little bit deeper in the Psukim and see what it says. The Torah tells us one of the things the spies expressed about their trip was V'shamra inu vas hanefilim b'nei anok. Sorry, b'nei nefilim. They say like this, you know what we saw in Eretz Yisrael? Or maybe they called it Canaan. We saw giants, children of the giants, huge people. We felt like grasshoppers. We were in our eyes like grasshoppers. And similarly, we were in their eyes. Okay? They're basically describing how we felt, the self-analysis. Okay? We were there, and we felt like grasshoppers. There's huge people there. We're tiny. We overheard them talking later. That there's these things that look like humans, but they're tiny like insects, like grasshoppers. We felt like grasshoppers, big, huge giants, and we're these tiny little creepies that are going around. There's a beautiful explanation from the Netziv. But I've told you, Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Alozhin for over close to 40 years. He says like this: we seemed like grasshoppers, vanihi kachagavim beinenu, we were like grasshoppers. That's the problem. Once you feel like a grasshopper, once you feel small, it's over. He says, look what happened by Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech was afraid, and because he was afraid, the pasuk says it twice. It says he was afraid, and then it says he trembled greatly. Why do you have to say a double lashon? He was afraid and he trembled. Right? Vayira and vayacharad me'ed. Vayacharad libay me'ed. First you say he was afraid, then you say he was trembling. Because Shaul HaMelech knew, if I'm scared, I'm really scared. The fact that you're afraid of the enemy, the fact that the spies went into Eretz Yisrael and they saw giants and they felt like grasshoppers, now we got a problem. Because the moment you're afraid, we'll do questions after. The moment you're afraid, That's the downfall. You're looking at yourself in a very small way. You don't think that you're capable. You don't think that you're able to do it. And that is their downfall. The Sfas Emes, the Gerer Rebbe, and Parshas and Chumash Bamidbar tells us a similar idea. And he says, because we looked at ourselves like grasshoppers, that's why we were grasshoppers in their eyes. In other words, how did it even come about that they should look at us like grasshoppers? Because we felt like grasshoppers. Mm-hmm. And when you feel yourself as small, as inadequate, or in English, as a topic of our share today, is low self-esteem, mm-hmm. that causes to actually you portray that onto the others. Okay? There's three categories when it comes to the topic of self-esteem. There's self-image, there's self-esteem, and there's self-confidence. Okay? Self-image, self-esteem, and self-confidence. What happens is like this. Self-esteem is when a person looks at himself, in this case the Meraglim, and they say, we're like grasshoppers, we're tiny, we're no match for them. Okay? When you feel that you're small, the next step is that you have that image, you portray that image onto others. And then you actually don't have the confidence, you act that way. Okay? If you think, right, that I'm nobody, then you feel that you're nobody, and you act that way, you portray that way to others. So what was the problem that Meraglim had? They were afraid of gaiva. They were afraid of arrogance. They were very humble people. They were tzaddikim, they were righteous, but they came into Eretz Yisrael. They started to look around, and they saw all of these big people, yeah, and they felt, I'm small. It wasn't because they were necessarily afraid per se. They truly felt small. Okay, there's a Gemara in Seita, Daf Hey Amud Aleph, that tells us that Amar Rav Chisda said, others say it was Mar Ukva said, that any person that has gasus haruach, a person that has arrogance, not the right type of pride, he's a big shot. Basically, we learn from a verse, from a pasuk, that Hashem doesn't dwell with him in the same place. Okay, Hashem says, I can't be with him in the same place. There's too much gaiva. Okay. And Bechlal, in general, throughout Torah, the idea of arrogance and gaiva is something which is very, very negative. And Torah pushes it to great degrees. There's a maimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe where he says that yeshus and gaiva is makar lekol minei ra. The source of all types of evil, where it really comes from, is ego. Okay, when a person has too much gaiva and too much sense of self, that's the source of everything. So they felt, for good reason, for their way of serving Hashem, if you will, that we have to be humble. And you come in over there, and just because you're coming from somewhere else, and you look at them, you don't start thinking, oh, I'm the greatest, I can take you guys out in a second, I'm so good, I'm so great. They truly were humble people, and they worked on that. And as a result, when they went into that situation, and they saw guys, giants, that were much bigger than them, they felt like grasshoppers. And when you have that negative self-image, then you have the negative self-esteem. You feel bad about yourself. You feel not good about yourself. And when you don't feel good about yourself, then you don't have that confidence. And it's all downhill. So it came from a good place. It came from too much humility, or the wrong type of humility. Okay? So when a person feels valuable, they feel that they could contribute something to society, they're going to be happier. They're going to be more productive because they feel they could do it. But if you come at the scenario and you feel that I'm nobody, because you have too much anava, you have too much humility, and we'll talk about that in a moment, what the right type of anava is, that causes the person to have that issue, that problem. Okay. Now, if Torah's ways are pleasant, right? All of our paths are peace. If Torah tells us to do something, it's healthy, it's appropriate, it's good. Okay, so if Torah wants us to be humble, what is it supposed to mean? We should just put ourselves down? We should be in a scenario and think that we're grasshoppers, think that we can't? It's what does Torah want from us as far as how we're supposed to behave and how we're supposed to view ourselves And what were the Meraglim supposed to do? It seems like they were doing the right thing, right? They were humble, which led them to see themselves as small, which led the others around to look at them like grasshoppers, which causes them to feel we'll never be able to conquer them. And we're saying it's a virtue, but it led to negativity, right? So we have to understand a little bit what's the idea of humility and what's the proper approach for that.
It seems to be something is not right here. On one hand, they describe themselves as a Hagavim.
It's grasshoppers, yeah.
From the other hand, they had no fear to bring all these giant fruits. After all, they're stealing that from those so-called giants, and they are grasshopper.
Okay.
If you have the state of mind of grasshopper, how come you go and take these giant fruits?
Okay, it's valid. The one answer perhaps is that you feel like grasshoppers doesn't mean that you're inadequate to do anything. They wanted to show the Yidden or even save the Yidden.
Ants do take grapes from people.
There you go.
And,
Whole group together.
and also,
Yes.
my opinion is they want to impress on the people that,
It's true.
that's the
Let me thank you for bringing this up. Let me just make a disclaimer. You can never get away from simple pshat. When Torah says something, it's the way it is. We're trying to understand a little bit deeper how tzaddikim, nesiim, managed to make such a mistake. What happened here? There's many explanations. It never gives explanation. They were looking for spirituality. They felt that the Yidden in the desert, in the Eretz Yisrael, would not be able to remain strong as Yidden. They're not going to have time to learn, to daven. What's going to be with Yiddishkeit? Let's stay in the desert. We get the mun for free. There's no bills to pay. Everything is smooth. You learn and daven and raise your children as God-fearing Jews.
there's job security.
But I want to talk about something else here. The issue we're dealing with is they had a lot of humility, which led to something negative. So are we supposed to be arrogant people? Or should we be humble and then suffer the consequences? Okay. The general term of humility, of bittul, and the way Chassidus describes it and teaches it are very different. Okay. Chassidus talks about, or the general idea of humility is that a person knows their limits. He knows their weaknesses, he knows their shortcomings. I know what I'm good at, but I'm not so arrogant because I know that there's certain things that I'm not so good at, right? You have some guy, Moshe he's an investment banker, and he's really, really good. And he's good with people, and he's good with closing deals, and he's great, okay? But he knows that when it comes to investing in medicine, I know nothing about it. So he has enough humility to say, I don't know, and he asks an expert. Or he knows that because he's very good with people and making deals and schmoozing them up, he's not good at keeping a schedule. So we'll get someone that's going to keep his calendar for him and make sure to tell him where to be and what, because you know. So that's the general explanation of what humility means. What humility is that I get my limits. I'm not everything. I'm good at something, but I know where that ends. Okay? So it's a certain level where a person says, if someone else had my qualities, they do better than me. Or I'm good, but it's not my own accomplishments. Okay, it's a healthy way, and it's good. But Chassidus takes it even further. Real bittul, real anava is even more than that. According to Chassidus, is not the person doesn't feel himself as so great. He has a certain bittul to where he comes from. In other words, who are you really? Bittul means I recognize that I am connected to the Eibishter. My true identity is not me or my accomplishment or how the world ascribes certain qualities to me. My real identity, who I am, is part of Hashem. I'll give an example from halacha. Whenever you want to understand something, look in Torah to try to understand it. Okay? What does it mean to be bittul? What does it mean to have that humility or nullification? It doesn't mean you're putting yourself down. Let's look at Hilchis Kashrus. Shulchan Aruch says that if you have any example that's given, but if you have a big pot of, let's say, meat, let's say chicken soup, okay, it's a meat dish, and a little bit of non-kosher fats falls into that pot, what's the halacha? So if you can't see it, it's blended in already, there's ways of figuring out, but one of the ways that we do it is you see is a bottle b'shishim. Are there 60 times more kosher than non-kosher in this pot? And then it becomes kosher. Okay? But here's the interesting thing. If you were to take this now pot, which has some non-kosher in it, right? But now it became kosher, and you add milk to it by mistake, right? It also has to get 60 times more. You could include that first fats that was prohibited, you could include that towards the 60 to overcome the milk that just fell in. It goes even further to say,
You probably don't.
you can. See, what happens is when something becomes bottle, becomes absorbed, it becomes so absorbed that it's now kosher.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that it's not kosher, you can eat it. It becomes part of it.
Yeah. Oh, you can include it on the kosher side.
The Beis Yosef says, even more so, that if two kizesim, the measurement of like an olive that fell into it, one was blood and one was chaylev, each one, let's say there was only 59 ounces in something, okay? And then two problems fell in there. The first one became bottle, right? It became nullified within it, and now the whole thing is kosher, and that's fine. And now you have 60. And now some other piece of non-kosher fell in, it also becomes bottle.
Not at the same time.
Right after, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's
What about milk?
the point is that when you have a drop of milk that falls into a meat, a non-kosher a meat dish, if there's 60 times more, then it becomes nullified. It becomes absorbed. The milk is like as if it doesn't exist. It exists. On the one hand, you say it's nothing because it gets absorbed. On the other hand, you say it exists because it counts to be the 60. It becomes part of the whole unit.
So, in a sense,
So you're nothing or you are something. Which one are you?
so in a sense, you can sit near this pot 60 times to do this.
No. Okay, very good. So there's a very important element here. This doesn't work. This whole thing of bittul doesn't work if you do it on purpose. Okay? Bittul is only, first of all, the diavad, and also the fact that you're putting in, let's say the recipe asks for 1 teaspoon of milk, and it's 60 times more, whatever. You can't, even if it's less than measurement, it's not going to become bottle because there's a certain amount that you're putting it in knowingly,
On purpose.
it's for taste, texture, whatever it may
Okay,
be.
good.
It's a problem. But what we see from this example is that bittul means you become absorbed into this new identity of what you really are now. In the case of kashrus, this milk or this fats that was not kosher now becomes kosher because it's fully absorbed in it, and at the same time, it still has its measurement. It's not gone. It's helping to absorb or to nullify the next issue that arises. Okay? Let's use another example, carrying on Shabbos. The Rambam tells us, Perek Yud Ches of Hilchos Shabbos, that if someone takes out less than a shear, less than a measurement of carrying outside, you can't carry on Shabbos outside. If you take out less than the measurement, then you are potter. You're not allowed to do it, but you don't get punished. Okay? Now, what's the measurement? It depends what it is. If it's a diamond and it's a tiny little diamond, so that tiny little diamond, even though it's tiny, it's still very valuable. So what's that measurement? Depends on the value of it. Okay, if you have food has to be a little bit more in order for it to receive a punishment, a consequence for carrying. Again, you can't carry anything on Shabbos, but if you did it already, there's a certain measurement that has to be valuable on some level. Okay, what happens if your food was in a vessel, it was in some kind of container, and it went out with that. But a tiny little morsel was not worth anything. On its own, it would be nothing. But it's in a container. What happens now? The container, says the Rambam, cannot connect with the food, can't be combined with the food to be considered a bigger share of carrying. Okay? Because the outer container is of no value. All it's here is to carry that food. Again, this is not in the Chatchila. You can't do this knowingly. You can't say, I'm going to carry a small key. You can't do that. But if a person carried something, the key would be valuable because it does the job. But if a person carried something by mistake, you're talking about consequence. When does a person get punished and so on? You say, an interesting thing, that if it's tiny, you're putter.
Crumbs.
You're exempt, yeah. And if those crumbs are in a bag, for example, If you put it in a bag because you wanted to keep it because you needed it for something, maybe it would become valuable. But
Mhm.
let's say it ended up being in a bag. And this bag, can you count the bag to be part of the shear? You can't, because it's bottled to the crumbs. It's only here to hold it. It's not of something on itself. If you were carrying a bag on its own, then probably it would be an issue.
Even if you have
No, it is no problem. I'm saying carrying it when there's no in the public domain.
So what's the status of the in this
This
community?
is not different topic.
Different status.
But the idea is like this. Ask your local rabbi. The idea of becoming bottle is that sometimes something's true identity is what's playing a role here, not what others think about me, not what I assume I am. A person says, "You know what I am? I'm a teacher. You know what I am? I'm a father. You know what I am? What's your real identity? Is it your occupation? Is it some accomplishment? Right? What is your identity? And what we have to understand is that bittul means you recognize that your essence is Hashem. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that every everything has a neshama, which is a chedek elikam al mamish. It's a part of Hashem Himself. Okay, so if you want to talk about what's healthy self-esteem, what it really is, it's appreciating who we really are. Okay, what's klipa? What's the opposite side of holiness? It's a person that's going against Hashem, right? Their true identity is godliness. And when you don't recognize that, that's when it's a problem. So what does bittul mean? Bittul doesn't mean I'm putting myself down. Bittul means I recognize who I really am, what my core identity really is. And whoever's closer to Hashem, the closer you are, the more humble you are. Because you realize it's not me, it's what my core identity is. My notes here. Okay? So what happens is you turn the ego into a positive, because it's not you. It's what you represent. I know it's a little bit deep here, but it's important that we recognize this concept. Because here's the mistake of the Meraglim. What the spies did, and their issue, is that they didn't realize for a moment, we are messengers from Moshe Rabbeinu. We might be small, might be big, it's irrelevant. I'm a messenger, I'm a shliach from Moshe. He sent me on a mission to Eretz Yisrael. It's not my greatness, it's not my strength, it's Moshe Rabbeinu. He has no problem. If you realize that who you really are is a messenger, Hashem sent you, go do this mission, it's not your abilities, it's not your strengths, it's Hashem's. You know your place because your real identity is Hashem. So what was the problem with the Meraglim? They had a lot of anava, they had a lot of humility. They didn't realize we're not here on our own. We didn't decide to go do it. Moshe called us in and said, I'm sending you on a mission. If I'm sending you, if Moshe is sending you, it comes with tremendous abilities. They didn't think for a second, Moshe can't do it. Moshe could do it. Of course he could do it. Right? If someone remembers that he's not a mitzias on his own, you're not an existence on your own. Your identity is Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu sent you, and all you are is a messenger, then humility is not a problem here. Follow? Yes, no, maybe?
You can ask the question, why Moshe Rabbeinu did not join them?
Okay.
You couldn't leave the camp.
So I just want to conclude 2 points here. Okay. The issue with the Meraglim was that they came to a result. Therefore, we can't go. That came from being very humble. They felt like they were nothing. We can't. They're too big. We're too small. That came from too much humility, which was in a wrong way, because humility is not that you think you're nobody. Humility is that my real me is my neshama, which is part of Hashem. And that's not limited. That's my true identity. If someone has that level, so it's not about my ego, it's not about myself, it's about what I'm here for and what I represent. In this case, the Meraglim should have felt a connection to Moshe Rabbeinu, that he sent them, that's their existence. Humility, when done according to Chassidus, is a very positive thing. It's a very empowering thing because it tells the person that you could do anything. Right? From Hashem. You're not on your own. Thank you for joining.
Yeah.
Deep stuff.
Ooh, a little bit too deep.
So